We're in 2 Kings still. We're in the 4th chapter. It's a bit of a long story, and it's a dramatic one. It builds up wonderfully. It's a story well told. You come up to this really exciting thing, and then the bottom falls out. How is anything going to come together again? And then a wonderful ending at the conclusion at the end that is also equally dramatic. So listen for the word of the Lord from 2 Kings, the 4th chapter, beginning in verse 8. One day, Elisha went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. She said to her husband, "I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed and a table, a chair and a lamp for him. Then he can stay there whenever he comes to us." One day when Elisha came, he went up to his room and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, "Call the Shunammite." So he called her, and she stood before him. Elisha said to him, "Tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. Now what can be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or the commander of the army?" She replied, "I have a home among my own people." "What can be done for her?" Elisha asked. Gehazi said, "Well, she has no son, and her husband is old." Then Elisha said, "Call her." So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. About this time next year, Elisha said, "You will hold a son in your arms." "No, my lord," she objected. "Don't mislead your servant, O man of God." But the woman became pregnant, and the next year, about that same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. The child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was with the reapers. My head, he said to his father. His father told the servant, "Carry him to his mother." After the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, then shut the door and went out. She called her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and a donkey, so I can go to the man of God quickly and return." "Why go to him today?" he asked. "It's not the new moon or the Sabbath." "It's all right," she said. She saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Lead on. Don't slow down for me unless I tell you." So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When he saw her in the distance, the man of God said to his servant Gehazi, "Look, there's the Shunammite. Run to meet her and ask her, 'Are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right?'" "Everything is all right," she said. When she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, "Leave her alone. She is in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me why." "Did I ask you for a son, my lord?" she said. "Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes?" Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and run. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not answer. Lay my staff on the boy's face." But the child's mother said, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So he got up and followed her. Gehazi went on ahead and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So Gehazi went back to meet Elisha and told him, "The boy has not awakened." When Elisha reached the house, there was the boy, lying dead on his couch. He went in, shut the door on the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he got on the bed and lay upon the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. As he stretched himself out upon him, the boy's body grew warm. Elisha turned away and walked back and forth in the room, and then got on the bed and stretched out upon him once more. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite." And he did. When she came, he said, "Take your son." She came in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. Then she took her son and went out. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. My parents threw me a bit of a curveball last weekend. My parents came to visit, and they came a different way than they had ever come before. And they don't do that. Once my parents go one way, that's the way they go, because then they know how far it is from each stop to the next. They know where they want to stop to eat. I know if they come 40 to 81 and up that way, that they're going to stop in Knoxville at an antique store, either on the way or on the way back. Depending on how the next day is going, they may or may not shoot over to Monticello on their way back up. And when they get to Lewisburg, either on their way in or at some point in the weekend, they will have to stop at the Antiques Barn at Lewisburg, because that's how they do it. I've traveled with my family all my life, obviously, and I grew to understand the rhythms and the habits. Even my sister and I began to do that when we were in college together. We would drive home, and this is before there were Cracker Barrels everywhere. They were mostly in Tennessee. Once upon a time, you couldn't go to a Cracker Barrel, but they were mostly in Tennessee, and she and I knew exactly how far it was from one Cracker Barrel to the next, so we could do breakfast at one and lunch at the other, and then make our way in. So they really threw me for a loop when they came a different way than they had ever come before. They don't do that, which also meant they didn't know where to stop, and they didn't know where to eat, and there was a lot of texting and computer work along the way, and they made it here just fine. Just fine. If I weren't afraid they'd be listening in a couple of weeks to this, I'd tell you at the part that wasn't quite just fine, but really they did a great job. So, Elisha is a similar guy. When he goes through Shunem, he knows where to stop. Because one day he was in this little town and there was a woman there, a well-to-do woman. A woman who was not only wealthy but generous and hospitable. And he knew that after the first time she asked him to come by for a meal, that she meant it. And so he stopped with her. It is probably a tribute to her cooking, but not her cooking, her servant's cooking, that he decided to come back. And so whenever he made his way there, he would stop at the Shunammite's house because that's a great place to stop and eat. And eventually it was a great place to stop and stay because she built him a room. She built him a little suite, a small room with a bed and a table and a chair and a lamp, and it was just his guest room there. She was generous. She was hospitable. Elisha liked it because it didn't throw him off his rhythms. He knew exactly where to stay when he was in that part of the world. And the woman said to her husband, then he could stay whenever he comes to us, which turned out to be kind of often there for a while, it sounds like. He was used to it. She liked it. Whether or not she thought it was just a good thing to have a man of God upstairs remains to be seen. Whether she thought that maybe if he stayed in the upper room, that some of whatever this was about this man of God would sort of trickle down to the lower dwelling, we do not hear, we do not say. We do know that she wants to be near him, and when she is in great distress, she wants him there, not somebody else, not a messenger, not a servant, not some token that he sends along. She wants to be near to the man of God. We'll talk about superstitions towards the end. Here's the teaser. Here's the spoiler. Don't be superstitious around your pastor, okay? It's my job not to be superstitious and to try to encourage you not to be. But I'll talk about that towards the very end. Well, it sounds like a great story, right? They get to know one another. They like each other. She's been very generous to him. He wants to know what he can do for her. And he has amazing means at his disposal. Unlike his mentor and teacher Elijah, who was always running from the king and queen because they were trying to kill him all the time, Elisha has the ear of the king and the ear of the commander of the army. What can we do for you? Do you want me to speak to the king for you? Do you have some legal dispute that I can help you work out? Do you want me to speak to the commander of the army, the two most powerful people in the land? I can speak up for you if you like. And she needs nothing. She is content with the great blessings that have been poured out upon her. And she has many blessings. This is her response. I can speak to powerful people. I can get you in the inner circle. I can do things for you. She says, I have a home among my own people. I am content. Well, we would hope she would be. She has a lot. She has several servants. They have a lot of land. They have donkeys. They have servants. They have all of this. But she is content. I have a home among my own people, which is an admirable, wonderful response. Is it truthful? It's hard to know. This is the thing I've been puzzling about, because what happens is Elisha wants to do something for her and can't figure out what she needs. She doesn't appear to need anything. But Gehazi, the servant, is observant, and he realizes, well, this couple is getting on in age. They don't have anyone to succeed them. It's not a situation like last week where if they don't have a son, they'll have no one to provide for them. They've built up enough wealth that she will be okay if her husband dies, but they do not have any children. This is what I've been puzzling about. Is this a word from the Lord to Gehazi? To Gehazi, not to Elisha? Is this Gehazi's own idea? And is it a good idea at the end? And depending on how you feel about fate and destiny and blessings and God's working in your lives, you may have mixed feelings about whether this is a blessing or not. You may be very suspicious of this gift. She has no son. Her husband is old. Well, bring her in here. A year from now, you will hold your child in your arms. About this time next year, you will have a son. The quick little rabbit trail is that should be familiar to you. If it's not, think about John the Baptist. John the Baptist's father is also told about a year from now, you will have a child, and he doesn't believe it, and that doesn't go well for him. He doesn't get to talk until the child is born. But that's significant. The one preparing the way for Jesus' coming, Jesus' cousin John the Baptist, is announced in the same way that Elisha speaks this word to this woman. That is probably not coincidence. Her response is strange to some of you and completely natural to the others. About this time next year, what you have given up hoping for, what you have no reason to expect, what you don't even probably pray for or dream about any longer will happen. You will have a son in your arms about a year ago, and she doesn't want it. Here's why. It's not because she and her husband are old. It's not because she's doing the calculations. My best friend is several years older than I. He does not listen to the sermons online, so let me tell you about my best friend. He's several years older than I. And he got married a little bit later, and his wife is not young, and the first child came quickly, and that was great. And then the second child, and then he called to tell me there was a third on the way, and that's when I started doing the math. Now, he's super healthy, and he's probably going to live forever, and he looks younger than I do, but he is 6 years older than I, and I started thinking, okay, high school graduation, college graduation, goodness gracious, he's not going to be a young man when all this happens. That's not why she's concerned. She doesn't want her to have her hopes raised and then dashed. And that's an important thing for us to think about. Because what you believe about God and how God works in your life and in this world is absolutely going to condition how you feel about her response. Is this crazy or is this absolutely natural? Of course, she's doing the right thing. She's a practical, pragmatic woman. Why raise your hopes up if it's only going to be dashed again? Why hope for this thing if it's only going to be snatched away from you? Why give me this hope and this dream and then I'll find out a year from now that it's not true? Does God want to give us good gifts or not? Is God the type of God who would tease us with something and then not provide? Or worse, and after you start reading the story, you might wonder this, is God the type of God who would give you something you've always longed for and then take it away again? And then how you respond to that loss also will speak volumes about how you feel about God. She doesn't want him even to say it. Don't even raise my expectations. Don't raise my hopes. If you keep your expectations low, then you can't be disappointed. And a lot of us make our way through the world this way. And it is not healthy. And it is not good. And I understand that we don't want to be disappointed. But God is encouraging us to pray boldly, to hope boldly, to dream big dreams. A year from now, you'll have a son. No, my Lord. Don't deceive me. Don't mislead me. Don't trick your servant. But it happened. A year from then, she's holding a child. The child grows. The child's healthy. Everything's great. The child is a young boy. He's able to go out to the fields and meet his father. And then everything goes wrong. Something tragic happens. Something goes terribly wrong. And he is imminently going to die. His father has a servant carry him to his mother. He doesn't know what's wrong. I have a lot of questions about the father in this story, which I don't have time to explore. Was he worried about the son? He didn't go with him. When the wife takes off to go a good ways away without the son, does he know already what's happened? Does he wonder what's happened? Is he just a clueless father? We don't know. I have a lot of things I want to ask the father in this story. The servant takes the boy to the mother. He sits on her lap until he dies, about noon. She goes up to the upper room, the guest room, the room of the man of God, and lays him on the bed, and then she goes out. And then it's amazing to watch how she responds to people. Is she in denial? Is she just a focused woman? And she's not going to put up with questions, and she's not going to put up with conversation. She's a woman on a mission. And she seems to think that Elisha can do something. She knows how terrible the circumstance is. She is not happy with Elisha, but I don't think this is a person without hope. I think she is going to the source, going to the solution. So she gets the servant, she gets the donkey, and she sets out. How far does she have to go? She has to go a long way. At least a half day's travel, if the roads are any good. Husband doesn't know why. It's not a time for worship. It's not the new moon. It's not the Sabbath. It's all right. Everything's all right. She's lying to everybody. And I don't think it's denial. I think it's so that she can move forward on her mission. She saddles the donkey. Don't slow down unless I tell you to. Go as fast as you can go. Miles and miles. I'll tell you how far in a minute. And then, this is unfortunate because the image I have of Elisha, unlike Elijah, is that Elisha kind of perches up on Mount Carmel, which looks over the Mediterranean Sea, but he's got this great view all around, and he's kind of up there being the prophet. And I read a lot of BC comics as a child, so I picture him as the guy on top of the mountain peak where people are always coming up and asking him questions. And that's not really what Elisha's like. But sure enough, he is on the mountain, and he looks out and he sees somebody coming in some haste, and he recognizes her. And he knows something's wrong. Sends his servant immediately. Are you okay? Is your husband okay? Is your child okay? And she's not answering him. Won't tell her husband, won't tell the servant, only talking to Elisha. Everything's all right. So they come up the hill, and Gehazi shrugs to Elisha. She says it's okay. But as soon as she comes up to him, she grabs hold of his feet. The other tiny little rabbit trail is that should remind you of something too, right? Many hundreds of years later, on the day that Jesus was raised from the dead, on Easter morning when Mary Magdalene saw him, she came and grabbed onto his feet. Gehazi knows this is not proper. You're not supposed to touch the prophet's feet, grab onto his feet. He's going to push her away because that's inappropriate. And Elisha says, no, leave her alone. She is in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me why. This is a weird position for Elisha to be in. He knows. He knows things. He sees things that nobody else sees. He understands things that nobody else understands. He is not used to being in this position. In this book, by the way, 2 Kings, I didn't do anything from chapter 3, but in the chapter 3, same position. He wasn't entirely sure. He wasn't given full knowledge. And he's a little bit upset about it. He's concerned for his friend. He's a little bit perplexed because God usually tells him. He normally, as soon as he would see her coming, he would know immediately what the problem is. He does not know. The best thing that I read written about this week, about Elisha not knowing, is this. The Lord has hidden it from me. It's the best thing I read. God is not a vending machine that pours out oracles, visions, word from the Lord, when primed with prophetic pennies. God is not a vending machine that pours out oracles when primed with prophetic pennies. Even though Elisha is the prophet, the man of God, and he puts his penny in the machine, God does not shoot out the answer. In confirmation class, we talked about our understandings of God. What is God like and what is God not like? And a vending machine God is one of the idols we tried to destroy in confirmation class this year. God is not a vending machine where if you put the right amount of money and push the right buttons, then what comes out is exactly what you wanted, without reference to what might be good for you or what God might want for you. Elisha does not know, and God's not a vending machine where he's just going to punch out the answer because he gave it the right response or the right approach. Bitter distress, the Lord has hidden it from me. And then she hits him with this question. He immediately knows what's happened. Did I ask you for a son? Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes? I told you not to get my expectations high, not to get me hoping and dreaming about this thing that I had already given up on. I had already decided it was never going to happen, and then you come along, and first I think you're teasing me, and then it happens, and this is going on for years, and now that I have been investing and loving and caring for this child, now he's been taken away. Did I ask you for this gift? I didn't want this gift in the first place. And for some of you, that'd be a good place to end the story, right? For some of us who approach it in this way, keep our expectations low, don't dare to dream, don't dare to hope, because we'll only be disappointed, is not the way that God wants us to make our way in this world, though He knows we will be disappointed. Jesus said to His disciples, be of good cheer. In this world, you will have troubles, you will have trials. Still, be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. We will struggle. We will sometimes experience tragedy and crises that are too much for us. But God still wants us to dream big dreams and hope big hopes and have high expectations of what God can do and what God wants to do in our lives. Well, Elisha, again, I love the way that Elisha responds in these two stories in chapter 4. The widow and the oil last week, and this Shunammite woman now. He responds with urgency and immediacy. He understands the situation, and he acts at once. He's not pushing her off. He is not hemming and hawing. Well, I'm so sorry about this, but he acts and quickly tells his servant, tuck your cloak up, tuck your cloak into your belt so you can take off running. Here's my staff. Take it and run. How far does Gehazi have to go? Almost a marathon. This woman has been traveling since noon all day long. It is late already, and Gehazi, the poor servant, is about to run pretty close to a marathon. Don't talk to anybody, don't greet anybody, don't respond to anybody who talks to you. Just go as fast as you can. And Gehazi takes off on the race, Elisha's staff in his hand. Maybe this will save the child. The mother is having none of it. You can send your servant, and you can send your staff, but you're coming too. Here's the last thing that'll remind you of something. It's only been a couple of weeks now. What does she say to him? As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. Elisha stayed at her house, eaten at her table, told her stories, no doubt, of his mentor and teacher, Elijah, and all the miracles that Elijah was able to work, and then how suddenly Elijah was swept up in a whirlwind, the chariot of fire came by, and Elijah went up to heaven, and in the course of that story, he had to tell her, and Elijah kept wanting to leave me behind. He kept saying, I have to go on here, you stay here. And what did I say to him? I said, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. And he tells more of the story. We get to this place, and Elijah wants to leave me behind again. He says, I'm going here, you stay here. And I have to tell him again, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. This woman's heard that story. She may have heard it more than once. And she hits Elisha with his own words. Elisha is acting. And there's no reason to think that if Gehazi had been sent with Elisha's blessing and taken the staff and put it on the child, there's no reason to think that would not have worked, that the miracle would not still have happened. But the mother says, no way. As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So he gets up and goes. The staff didn't work. Gehazi got there ahead of him, put the staff on his face. Nothing has happened. I told you weeks ago when Elijah did something similar that there are people who say, okay, this is your first recorded instance of CPR in history. Maybe with Elisha, but definitely with Elisha. Royal Society of Medicine in their journal said, this is it. First instance of CPR. Mouth to mouth, eye to eye, hand to hand. And a bigger man pressing down on his body, gets up, walks around, does it again, and ta-da, it's no surprise, it's just CPR. And you can feel that way if you want, so long as you will grant me this. God worked a miracle in that room that day. They come all this way. The boy's been lying there for all these hours. And Elisha comes, and what's the first thing he does when he walks in the room? He prays. He prays to the God who has worked great miracles through him. He prays to the God who answered his prayer that this woman would have a child, would have a son. He prays to the one that he is asking, why is this son not still alive? And he is trusting in the God who has power over life and death, the God who is going to act in this situation. Elisha prays, and a miracle happens, and the boy is restored to life. The boy sneezes 7 times and opens his eyes. I love that detail in the story. He sneezes 7 times. Back weeks and weeks ago when I was planning out, okay, what are we going to do this fall? Elijah and Elisha might be fun. And we get to this story and the boy sneezing 7 times. And I thought, well, you know, what I've always been told about why we say God bless you when somebody sneezes, or Gesundheit, if you prefer that, is because once upon a time we felt like that if you sneeze, there's a chance your soul might come out of your body. And so we're saying God bless you, which I was told and read for years, is basically a way of saying, congratulations, your soul stayed in. You're still with us. And I thought, wait, this is completely backwards, because he sneezes 7 times, and instead of his soul coming out of his body, life is restored to him. But I got thinking about things, so I decided to look up, why do we say God bless you anyway? Is it really the whole soul thing? And how would you respond to a sneeze in another country? With other languages. I thought, this could be very interesting. In other countries, what do they do when somebody sneezes? In Germany, Gesundheit in the Netherlands, right? And some Americans will do Gesundheit. It turns out it's not really very interesting at all. Because Gesundheit just means health, right? Almost every single culture that responds to a sneeze says something about your health. Or, in Chinese, evidently, may you live 100 years. Live a long life. And I've got real problems with this for lots of reasons. One, here's my first problem. We don't mean it. What we mean is, I hope you're not sick because you just sneezed and I got sneezed on and I hope I don't get sick. I'm not really concerned about your health. I'm really concerned about mine. God bless you. And I mean that. God better bless you because I don't want to get sick. To your health, please be healthy and please don't be sick. By the way, there was one interesting one. Couple. In Ethiopia, in Amharic, they don't say God bless you. They say, may God forgive you, which is a little more dire, right? That'll make you serious about a sneeze. May the Lord forgive you. I don't think I sneezed because I was sinning, but if you're right that I was this close to death, then yes, I do pray that the Lord will forgive me. Other than that, it's basically to your health, and it becomes essentially a superstitious thing. If I say God bless you or to your health, may you have a long life, may you live well, it means please don't let me get sick because you may be sick. So here's my quick thing. You've heard it before. Don't be superstitious around your pastor. If you have to knock on wood, do it very gently as if it's in time to a song that's in your head. If you have a rabbit's foot on your keychain, which isn't as popular anymore, you don't have to show it to me. It's my job not to be superstitious. He sneezes 7 times. His soul didn't go anywhere. Life came into him because God worked a great miracle. God breathed life back into this child, and he was alive. Oh, I've got a sailor in the room, so I'm going to repeat this. You've heard it before, but quick. Because I think we're not allowed to be superstitious, but believe in a God who is powerful, all-powerful, and all-loving, and at work in this world, I don't believe we are allowed to be superstitious. And I will not fuss at you about it. I may smile at you. I may look at you sidelong glance and something like that. Here's the thing. I will never have a big boat. But if I were to have a big boat, I have all these ideas about it. If I were to have a great, big, beautiful sailboat, I would want to do several things. One, I would want to paint it green, because some sailors think that it's unlucky to have a green boat. But I've seen green boats, so that's not as far as I would go. Then I would want to give it a really good name, so that anybody hailing me would have to say the name of my boat, which would drive them all crazy. Because on a boat in the middle of the ocean, you don't want to talk about the number 13. That's unlucky. I don't believe in luck, because I'm a Christian believing in a living God who's at work in this world. So I would not worry about the number 13. You're not supposed to whistle on a boat because it might call up wind. And what if you call up too much wind? You get in a storm. So you don't talk about whistling on boats, and you certainly don't whistle. And you don't mention pigs. Pigs are very bad luck on boats. So do you know the name of my boat yet? 13 Whistling Pigs. I'm never going to have a great big 13 Whistling Pig sailboat, and you know what would happen. In my being so confrontational with the world and insisting on not being superstitious, that would be the boat that would sink right out of dock, and then everyone would say, "You see." Because God cares nothing for my pride, but only for my holiness and sanctification. So God would let me stumble and fall so that in another way He could show what kind of God He is. He is not a God of low expectations. Don't get your hopes up because He will disappoint them. He is a God of unbelievable expectations. We once were lost and we have been found. We were never going to be and He found us. We once were dead. What's going to happen now? We're dead and it's over, and He made us alive. The God we pray in, the God we pray to, the God we trust in, the God we worship is a God who has power over life and death and delights in answering prayers and giving to us all that we need. A God of blessing, a God of power, a God of life who wants us to dream big and hope big and pray boldly. Will you please join me in prayer? Lord, help us to be bold in our prayers and help us not to temper our expectations lest we not get hurt. Help us to be those who go boldly out into the world, knowing that sometimes we will be bitterly disappointed. But at other times, our being willing to be out there will show your good news to this world, good news of saving love, and a God who did not sit back and worry about being hurt, but gave Himself up for us on the cross so that we might have life.